Beautiful. Now, as you remember, Brother Tehuti, up here on Georgia Avenue, they had all these black businesses up here. The House of Kemet, Jewels of Baton, Pyramid Bookstore, the Blue Nile, Everlasting Life, and I know that you pushed for this strip up here on Georgia Avenue. Now, mind you, Howard University is right down the street, to push for it to be called Little Africa. Now, we got a mayor up here in Syracuse. Not that this goes to, but I thought it interesting, who largely came out of a Republican household, and ran for independent 4 years and ended up becoming the mayor. And he's done some stuff, and he just recently got reelected. And he's gone through some trials. The Italians, his part of his own community, mad with him because he wanted to take this Christopher Columbus statue down, and recognizing that Christopher don't mean everything, the same things to everybody. Syracuse got, I forget how many million, I think 193 million, right around there, somewhere in there, in pandemic relief money. And that he said that he was going to and put a portion of that into the South Side, which is the black community in Syracuse, and give black folks small interest business loans, which I thought to myself, I said, boy, my experiences with that, what Tehuti used to tell me, that's been forbidden, any type of loan to black folks.
Okay, well, let me start with us being up here,
right,
like on Georgia Avenue, pioneering this strip, as a black cultural business experience. You were right. A lot of the stores here reflected names, from different aspects of Africa. The 7 Powers of Africa, starting with the Blue Nile herbal shop, the House of Kemet cultural shop and bookstore, Jewels of Baton, the Pyramid bookstore. We were all grouped along this strip. And what I saw and what I was advocating with the president of the Georgia Avenue Business Association is that, we go downtown to Chinatown. We can go across to Koreatown, there's Little Italy, that shopping districts reflect culture, and that they are known by, the shopping district itself is known by the culture it reflects. Therefore, I thought, since we were right here on this beautiful strip of Georgia Avenue with all of these businesses independently named, names from some aspect of African culture, that Georgia Avenue to me was like the Nile River. And the great universities in ancient Egypt, like Howard University, symbolized the reflection of that. That's why I thought that would be a good idea, that we call this section of D.C. Little Africa. Of course, the big behemoth in politics in this area is Howard University, and it was Howard University that fought hardest against getting that name change made as such. But now moving to today in Syracuse, it sounds like it's a real progressive man who became mayor, and he really is a thinker and is reflecting progressive thought. He kind of reminds me of your neighboring states, one of your neighboring states, Senator Bernie Sanders, as such. See, it's as such that in order to uplift the black community where we are, our own shopping districts, expand for jobs, for ourselves, the business owners, kids, and that kind of thing, that we need to have businesses owned by the residents that are utilizing those businesses in that neighborhood. And because historically ethnic minorities have been robbed of or denied government assistance in establishing businesses, it is a real progressive idea for him to set aside funds to want to offer low interest loans to people in the neighborhood to start businesses. Again, so it's a very progressive idea.
Don't just build restaurants.
Yeah, well, you know,
That's good as anything.
that's true. That's true. Well, it can't be just restaurants, but with the change in capitalism, what has happened, you know, a brother could open up a little small hardware store for the people in the hood to run up and buy screwdrivers, screws, nails, a little paint and what have you, right? But Home Depot has made it impossible for the individual little small community hardware store to exist, you know, as such. Large corporate conglomerates putting stores in the neighborhood have run family-owned businesses out of the neighborhoods. And again, when you run a bunch of businesses out of the neighborhood, the economics of the neighborhood actually is oppressed in such a way that the neighborhood can't grow and keep moving forward as such. Again, here is a perfect example with all of the, I don't know what Howard's student population is, but we have a large population of black students, all right here across the street, you know, like that's running all the way down to Florida Avenue, this campus and its impact. And they go out and buy little things here and there as such, but they can't buy it in the neighborhood. Again, because the big box stores, the big, again, Home Depots, Best Buys, now the big Targets, and all of those things are running family-owned businesses out of the neighborhoods. And so again, we the people, I hate to tell, you know, but hey, you have to learn how to spend your dollar. Don't go to Best Buy. Don't go to Home Depot, you know, as such. Run them out of business so that you can establish more family-owned businesses in the community where you live, where you can walk and shop and walk back home. That it's a very positive thing. But again, I mean, that'll take a social revolution, both of the residents of the community and the politicians over the community to help reestablish community-owned businesses, which will be the part of the foundation of uplifting the people in those communities, the community itself, you know, like, and bringing the self-respect, jobs, and opportunities. So I don't know that mayor's name, but he's Ben Walsh. But he sounds like he's a very progressive, forward-thinking politician. And I'll salute him for the limited effort that he's making, but he's making an effort in the right direction. Again, part of the young friend of mine called me. He was watching something on the History Channel about the building of the American highway system. And he said, well, Brother Tehuti, this guy said what you said in one of those lectures, that back in the 1950s, as they laid out the international highway system across America, in all the major cities where these highways went through, right? The highways went through and divided up the black community as such, right? They went through and you know, like, just right here, like the Southwest Freeway that you know about here in D.C., where the Prince Hall Masons Grand Lodge was at 5th and Virginia Avenue. And now that's, you know, that's the Southwest Freeway, Southeast Freeway going across that area. They just tore that whole area down. It also, they did the same thing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We all know about Black Wall Street, but in part of the recovery, to ensure that black folks would not have the power to again raise their themselves to a stronger economic position, they blasted right through the black neighborhood. You know, like again, and I'll tell the people, one of my favorite soul groups from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Gap Band. See, the Gap Band is named after the 3 main streets that were burnt down by the white mob in 1921. Greenwood, Archer, and Pine. That's what GAP stands for, right? And that's the area down there now. You know, you got a big highway going through. You can look up and see a mural on a building or two, but they will never be able to reconstruct that area as it once existed in terms of its economic strength, because now you have this big interstate highway running right through the middle of it. See, so those are the kind of political decisions that were made, all right, which help weaken the strength of the people living in those communities. So I'm sure that I don't know about Buffalo and Syracuse, but if the highways run through there, I'm sure it splits the community.
I can't believe that you said that, because the mayor is taken down in 81. Now, 50 years ago or more, where 81 is now, the highway that runs through the city used to be the original black community. Now the mayor is taking it down and gonna create a duct around, and they screaming and hollering at him about that. But like you said, now that black community won't be reconstructed. That's gone. And to think about the fact to those racist white people out there, and there are many, who will say, well, why are you going to give them people some low interest business loans? And shout out to Dr. Umar for bringing this out. Well, back when was it, the World War I, I think it was, and World War II at the end, when white people tried to got black people to come up to the north and actually tricked them, gave them jobs while they sent the white people out, took over their jobs while they went to war. But what they didn't tell the black people, Dr. Umar was saying, is that when they come back, you're going to be out of a job. And those cities had, most of the projects were white back then. Now, where did the black people go? Many of them under bridges living, didn't have nowhere to stay. They finally let some of the black people in the projects, and the white people so hateful, I don't want these niggas living next to me, pardon the expression, living, that's what they said, living next to me. And the white people said, well, wait a minute, don't worry, we gonna give you small interest business loans to move out into the suburbs. You didn't get there because you were so smart, you got there because of those small interest business loans. Now, I know I kind of went all over the place. Can you kind of tie that together, sir?
Yeah, Dr. Umar Johnson, yeah, he was correct, and again, he didn't, let me put it this way, Malcolm also talked about some of the similar type of things that occurred, but again, we have to have a wider perspective and understanding that the black folk who were running away from the Jim Crow of the South, get out of here. There's no way we can lift ourselves up and go forward, because every time we've tried to do so, all right, something has always come back. I will take Wilmington, North Carolina. Had a black city council, a black mayor. I mean, after Reconstruction, right, was moving forward, building itself up, and the Ku Klux Klan came in, and ran all those folks out of town. All right, and what have you, right? And and had a hit list of people they wanted to kill. So a lot of activists who stepped forward following the Civil War from 1868 through 1900, a lot of them were who weren't lynched, outright murdered, left town and moved north, for safety. Again, the great migration up the Mississippi River from Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, moving up through Tennessee, Chicago, branching north through Cincinnati, along the Ohio River over to Columbus and Akron and what have you, from Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. That migration moved north up through dropping off in Delaware, moving on to Pennsylvania, New York State, right? Again, these black folks moving up. And he was correct in terms of when World War II started? Actually, it started with World War One. Again, the Americans at that time began discriminating to some degree against this black population, is that first didn't want blacks in the army to go fight in World War One, but again eventually they caved in and let some blacks in, right? But since the young white American males were drafted to go fight in World War One, they backfilled the jobs that those boys left with a lot of the migrants who moved, black migrants who moved up north. All right. The great center where it occurred was Detroit, Michigan, which was a great manufacturing center, of course, for automobiles and all the additional industries that were developed around that. But again, Buffalo, Syracuse, see that internal, those cities, I think along the, I forgot the canal, but Lake Erie, and those lakes up there, right, were again great manufacturing towns. So again, all of those black migrants moving north, because the white boys were sent out over to fight, it was a lot of job openings. And you're right, a lot of black folks moved up there, and fill those jobs. But because of the nature of who they were dealing with, hey, they went up as individuals, got themselves ahead to get a job and that kind of thing, did not organize. And when the white folks came back, the white men came back after the war, again, I think there's a law that they had to give them their jobs back because of the law. You can't, when you're drafted out of a job to go fight, if you're lucky enough not to be murdered during the war, when you get back, your job position is supposed to be available for you. I would say that we weren't inquisitive enough about what was going on and didn't do our own, didn't have a full enough understanding of the laws governing the American workforce. But what was true when during the time that jobs were available and money was flowing, that the black folks made no provisions to provide for self at the end of the war. And when those people came back, again, man, that was a further cause for conflict. And again, Malcolm said it straight up. When it comes down to say you're going to take a man's job, that man is going to fight to keep his job. And so the conflict was built into the situation, and these people coming back from war wanted their jobs back. The other half of that, though, is the fact that black heroes coming back from having fought in the wars weren't given jobs, and oftentimes were lynched or beat up because they were in uniform and expecting to be treated equally once they got back and found that America was just as Jim Crow after World War II as it was before World War II, as such. So what he said, again, I agree with Dr. Johnson,
And the white people were into projects at first.
They were poor white communities. Again, one of the things that the ruling class Americans have always done, they send their poor people off to fight for them. We can go all the way back to the who do you think were the members of the American cavalry and the American army in the as they spread across America, running the native peoples off the land? It was the poor immigrant whites coming to this country, all right, and they filled the ranks of the army, the cavalries and what have you, with the exception of after the Civil War. These units are what we now call the Buffalo Soldiers. All right, again, poor blacks getting out of slavery, but found out that they were sharpshooters and could fight, right? So they were enlisted in the 10th Cavalry and other units like that to go out and from St. Louis to the Pacific Ocean. All right, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean is the Native American land base. But by the end of the Civil War, from St. Louis or the Mississippi River all the way to the Pacific Ocean was open territory, mostly Native American lands, and these soldiers, these poor white soldiers, along with some poor black soldiers, these Buffalo soldiers, were employed to go out, and they're the ones who committed the genocidal practices of running the Native American, killing the Native Americans, running them out. They committed genocide. They would go through villages, murdering men, women, and children in order to take the land. So it's a strategy that ruling class whites have always done. They use the poor people as their foot soldiers to do the dirty work and never fully reward them. They'll reward some of the officers who lead these foot soldiers, but they never reward the foot soldiers. So yes, in the immigration of poor whites from Europe to America, most of them came to this country and were housed in ghettos, the poorest type of housing, like that they could get away with building for people to occupy. And again, as
that's what Dr. Umar said. I want to leave that out. The ghetto was started by the United States government.
Yeah.
Black people didn't start the ghetto.
Oh no! Black folks didn't create the ghetto. I mean, the word ghetto is not black. The word ghetto comes from Europe. It's a European concept of corralling poor white people and condensing them into the smallest possible area that is easy to police. Because where you have a bunch of poor people, it doesn't matter the color, poor people want to live, so they're going to go out and they're going to rob and steal and do all the things that only poor blacks are being accused of doing today. It's the process of poverty. It's a process of economics. It's not one's nature to want to live in, like a homeless person in a cardboard box, like in an alley. It's no one wants to live that way. But again, rich people, the ownership class, they know they can get away with building real cheap, poorly built structures to just usher poor people into and make a profit off of them. You don't have to rebuild it. Just let it run down till it ain't no good. Why do you think all the projects all across the country? No, again, poor people, not much resources at all, living there with less, in the poorest condition, the cheapest type of materials, like the thinnest walls, the cheapest piping in all of these facilities. And so what happens? More people crowded into these spaces, using it and utilize it. These places break down and they are kept in that condition. That is a strategy of capitalism. See, the strategy of capitalism is to rip people off. Rip them off. Again, going back to my friend, I say it again, capitalism at its extreme point is only good for the rich and the ruling class. Right now they're dealing with the fact that, this guy who owns the Washington Post, who just went up and took that little shot up to the edge of space, Jeff Bezos, he is a guy who takes no salary. All right, he's got so much money in stock built up that he takes little or no salary, so he doesn't have to pay income taxes. His money comes from his stock holdings and interest. He can take down $5 million a year from his stock interest and pay no taxes on that at all, and not get paid. All these look, capitalism is the biggest technology created as a system of economics in the history of humankind. It's worse than, if you're living on land that a man declares he's the king of the country and all the land is his. Or back in the old days when the Catholic Church was an empire, all right, and all the land belonged to the Pope, and he assigns it out, and you got little serfs, little people running around, living on it, doing all the work, but all the profits go to he who owns it. The ruling class as such. Today is no differently. The propaganda forces of the American capitalists have made a word like socialism a negative term in the eyes of most of the people, especially the people who would benefit most from it. But because of the war between the East and the West, capitalism and socialism, all right, coming out of 1917 with the success of the socialists in Russia and establishing, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, that's what have you. The capitalists have been fighting the idea that there should be equality in the economic system in a way that the working class people have a reasonable and equitable share of the profits that they create from their labor. Capitalists said no. Jeff Bezos pays almost slave wages to the people who work in his companies, all right? And he's a multi-billionaire. I almost call him a trillionaire as such, right? Because he's making so much profits. And yet people are don't make enough money to pay decent rent, you know, like in an adequate building, so they have to move to the lower economic interest buildings in their cities or towns, right? The poorest areas, what's now called ghettos, that's the only place they can afford rent in order to live in those conditions. It's all economically connected. We don't talk about economics enough because the ruling class, he who defines the terms and who keeps pushing it. So you hear it from television, you see it in the news, you hear it on TikTok, you hear it on Twitter, you know, like social media. So everything about what's good for you as an everyday working class person is not good for you. You know, like, hey, they got this nasty term. What's this boy up there? And again, the senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, who's a socialist. Right now, this bill they just passed, I think yesterday, the people on the floor are saying here we're getting closer and closer to socialism. And that's something that you should all fear. You know, look how bad socialism went for China. In 1947, China was the poorest country in the world. When Mao Zedong took his government over, ran all the foreigners out, and started re-educating his people. So from 1949 to 2000, you know, like in 51 years, China went from one of the poorest countries in the world to one of the most powerful countries in the world, because Mao was intelligent enough to convince his people that they need to reorganize and redevelop their society based on these socialist principles. Yeah, but because the white people in Russia was having problems fighting the capitalists from the West who were infiltrating people trying to overturn their revolution, and so they did a whole lot of what I call a lot of dog shit to try to save themselves. They end up what I call concretizing or making permanent the power of the leadership got rich, and the average Russian stayed poor as such, right? So they keep pointing to that. Or what the United States did to Cuba, 90 miles off our coast. Cuba never had a chance to fulfill its socialist dreams because for the whole time after Castro overthrew the government, the United States government was consistently infiltrating and doing everything it could to try to overthrow that socialist revolution on that island and what have you. Yet, in that time period, the thing that Castro turned to, his most successful thing, was developing his education system, where he sent armies of doctors and nurses to Africa. You know, like wherever the brothers were fighting to free themselves from European colonialism, Zaire, South Africa, Namibia, you know, like Castro forces were there helping them organize, providing medical training for them, you know, like providing doctors and nurses for them and what have you, right? It was successful at that point. But again, with the pressure 90 miles off their coast from this big gorilla, the United States of America, they were never able to successfully carry out their revolution. They tried and they tried and they're still trying as such, but the United States kept putting pressure on them. So all the Cubans who had control of the money under Batista before Castro came into power, they all fled Cuba with all the money and moved to Florida. Mostly Miami. You know, so all the rich Cubans, you know, like left with all of the wealth of Cuba that belonged to the people, right? They left and moved to Florida, and then they complained, oh, well, he took over our businesses, they took our houses, they took this stuff, but they took the money. So in Florida today, we have the richest and most successful Cubans in Cuban history, because when they fled the island in 1959 through 1963, they took the wealth with them as such, right? And they're the ones who are anti-anything, and anybody who talks about doing anything on behalf of the people, they are against it. Because that's what Castro was telling the people. We need to overthrow Batista because he has allowed all of these people from the American, at that time they call it the American mob, who controlled the gambling and all of the bad, all of the decadent prostitution.
He kicked them all out.
He kicked them all out. See, hey, as such, right? And they were all there on the island, like, hey, that was America's playground in the sun. See, they could go down to Cuba, and get away with everything legally, they have all the decadent fun that they wanted to have. So when these people got kicked out of Cuba, again, still to this day, they are still complaining about what they lost. And so the term socialism got a negative eye in American media, in American academia, the universities, and what have you across the board. So whatever is best for the average working class person in this country does not get a fair shot, because the institutions that control the information media, all right, has chastised and made a negative thing of what's best for the average working class man. And so they keep pushing this bullshit about what's best for the upper class. So you see all, and I'll put it in, even in the social media videos and things, in the music videos, everything is always lush and plush. Everybody who's made it, right, they, spend it, spending the Benjamins on all kind of luxury shit. It's about individualism and what's best for these individuals who have made it. That's push. What's best for the average working class family, what's best for the average person in the community, that's not put in your videos. Like, again, hey, I like LeBron James, I like Jay-Z, I like Michael Jordan, and all these brothers and sisters who've been very successful in plying their craft, whatever it has to be, and they've made a lot of money from it. See, again, the plush lifestyle is what the youth grow up seeing, and what's pushed at the youth in terms of what they desire. And that's what's best for everybody, but what's best for the individual. That is the downfall of our community. That was the downfall of our community, whether we were on the plantations, like where you had the old Uncle Tom slave, I say, what's best for me? And if I see Joe Blow getting ready to run away, or he's planning to do something to get out of this, I'm going to go tell Master so I can get me one more cup of beans or one more side of pork to eat. They'd be in a better position. See, it's all what's been pushed at us, and unfortunately what a lot of us don't realize underneath of what we are pushing forward is what's best for the individual. And that's what's best for us as a community. See, and if there are 10 houses, and I'm living in house number 5, 10 houses in a row, I'm living in the middle. I hit the lotto for $1 million or $10 million, right? Well, all the poor people living on the other side, on either side of me, if I don't do something to uplift their lives, they're going to spend the rest of their time trying to figure out how to rob me, how to get some of what I got. Because selfishly, like, I'm in the midst of poverty and I get rich somehow and I let everything around me stay as it is. That's part of the problem that we have to break up. But again, going back to where we started, no, ghettos were not created by black folks. Black folks ended up living in ghettos, but black folks didn't create the ghettos.
And the white people before, that didn't seem to trump the racism. I don't want to live next to
No.
So they were given a jump and they moved out, and then
That's true.
And the job's not there, what you expect black folks to do.
Hey, well, again, that's why I say we need it. We really do need a social revolution in order to change how we think about what is best for us. Sadly to say, from one perspective, this, like what they're doing in this country to have what they call early childhood education, like, and things of that nature, those are some steps forward, all right, but so far down the road, like that it won't make an immediate impact or change on adults whose lives need to be changed. Yeah, it's good for the child. It's good for the mother who gets some time off to take care of her babies after the child is born. Those are some good things, again. But again, I mean, we have, I think, the 775 billionaires in the United States who didn't pay any taxes last year. 775 billionaires who didn't pay any income taxes last year. That's such, right? So you have a society where through legalities, law firms, these guys go to school and they learn the law of money, right? They figure out a way where if you have a whole lot of money, you ain't got to pay no taxes. So these guys are running around. I mean, hey, again, I'm glad that, what's this guy, Elon Musk? He invented a spaceship of some kind that took some people up to the edge of space and brought them back down. That's play money. Play money. Didn't accomplish anything. A joyride up to say, oh wow, man, we just made it through the stratosphere. Look back now, now we're gonna come back down. So that's play money. And there are thousands of people going to bed hungry every night. Like the government of California or the city of Los Angeles, within the last week or so, just went out and bulldozed down one of the homeless camps. The one that was out there near the LA VA Center, I understand, right? They just cleaned all that area out. The people have no place to live. So they get a tent, or they go find a few cardboard boxes and some other stuff and put together a little shelter to try to live, because they can't afford the rent. All right? They can't afford, they have no jobs. They're looking almost for handouts for foods daily. They go to feeding programs. And so what does the city government come along and do? Hey, it's unsightly. There's a danger. One of the guys, we saw him urinating on the side of the road in this area, right? So we got to clean this mess up. But these are human beings. These are lives. And you've created a city structure that basically turns its back on those who can't afford, all right, to pay the high rents for what housing is available. So, I mean, like, he got veterans, like, hey, I fought in the Vietnam War and stuff, right? I'm a veteran. So guys who've come back from facing, life and death situations, who have what we're calling post-traumatic stress disorder from the trauma they experienced in war. So they're not normal when they come back home. They can't, like, get a regular 9-to-5 job 5 days a week and follow along. So these guys end up on the streets, and they need a place to live. And so they get a little pup tent from somewhere. The new modern Home Depot tents, or these, like these that type of facility, just to try to live, because they can't afford a home. But the people who are making it, the working class people, like all the way up to the rich, they're doing well, right? They they have no programs in place to address the problems caused, all right, by the society itself. Again, 12 years I was in the Air Force, all right, as such, right? I wish I had felt like Muhammad Ali felt when I got drafted. I was too young and dumb, all right, to understand what Muhammad Ali was actually saying. He would rather lose his job. At that time, he was a boxer, prize fighter, right? And the ability to fight and go to prison, rather than go fight in a war against people who looked a lot like him, who had never called him nigga or anything else, right? Just because the government, for some odd reason, wants to stop this theory that they have in their minds. If Vietnam goes communist, there'll be a domino effect. All of Southeast Asia will become communist. Well, here we are in 2021, and now they're sponsoring tourist trips to Vietnam to show the success of this Vietnamese revolution. As they explain it, they didn't want to be under anybody's thumb. Not America's, not China's, not Russia's. They wanted to be independent. They had been conquered by one Asian power after another for hundreds of years. All right, and they wanted independence and freedom. All right, they didn't want to be on anybody's thumb. But you had a handful of South Vietnamese who had collaborated with the French when it was a French colonial country, right? And so these people who worked for the French government on behalf of France in Vietnam, these are the people who didn't want to unite with the people up north. They wanted to keep a capitalist section of the country where they would be the ruling class, like, and what have you, to maintain that country. So they cry wolf. Oh, we don't. The communists are coming. The communists are coming. And they're bad for everybody. So here, being too stupid to do any research in history to find out what was going on, like millions of other young American men, I got drafted and went over there to that war. The worst thing in the world is a state of war. All right. So coming back from that war now, hey, what do you got? To help me out. While I was gone, hey, my job disappeared. As such, right? Well, hey, now, I was a kid when I left. I'm a grown man now. I want a family, what have you, but I need a good position in order to take care of a family. None of that is provided for you. So what happens, we end up all over this country. In every major city, there are hundreds of veterans, not just of the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the one where they kicked Hussein, Saddam out of Kuwait. There are veterans who went over to the Afghan War. There are veterans who are victims of the Second War in Iraq, all living out on the streets, unable to readjust to life as a civilian, and so they are homeless. But the homeless veterans are not the largest part of the homeless population. Again, with the Richard Nixon making a deal with China and American corporations making a deal to understand that, well, we can get our stuff manufactured in China cheaper than we can manufacture it here in America. Remember, the working men didn't go decide to have all the products manufactured in China and sent back here. The ownership class did that. The ownership, Ford Motor Company, Frigidaire, HP, Hewlett Packard. All of these companies can get any product that we use made cheaper in China than they can manufacture it here. But then they sell it for the same price and make a higher profit here. So the reason that the working class lost a lot of jobs is because the industries themselves decided to go where they could get their products made cheaper. They're the ones who taught the Chinese how to make American goods so that they could get them manufactured cheaper. All right. So in that ensuing time, China's making billions and billions of dollars. And again, from 1949 to 1999, 50 years, China caught and passed Russia and the United States. All right, with their organization of their society and their ability to make income and employ their people. They don't tell you that story. But go back and look at 1949, look at the 1999, look at the size of the Chinese military. Look at the size, or look at the quality of the Chinese aircraft carriers. Look at the quality of the Chinese aircraft. All right, it's Navy. All right, it's military. Equal. Hey, nobody wants to go mess with China. Yeah, they got a missile defense system. They got missiles they can launch. They caught up with the West, or I put it this, they caught up with white people. In 50 years, these yellow people, as they call them, caught up with these white people in less than 50 years. And now the argument is, are they number one, number two, or number three in terms of the most powerful countries in the world? But they are a socialist country. So they organize their resources differently than what they did here. And then, as Mao says himself, see, it's not just a pure socialist country, it's a mixed economy, because you need some capitalism to go along with your socialism in order to really move forward. So they have a profit-making sector, but the taxes on that profit such a way that it helps the social structure move forward. And hey, they tell me that Chinese cities, Shanghai, but Hong Kong, Beijing, are all better structured than a whole lot of old American cities. They move forward. So people need to read, they need to do research and understand what is really going on, and not accept the definitions that the ruling powers keep putting out through social media or television. In terms of what's going on, we really need to understand what's going on. The best thing for us is not what the people who are ruling over us keep telling us is best for us. See, for them, what's best for them is that we keep believing them. Because as long as we keep believing what they're telling us is what's best for us, they will continue to move up the economic ladder, getting richer and richer and richer, and our communities will continue to be devastated.
All right, Brother Tehuti, take us on home, sir. Take us on home.
Okay, Brother Dave Chappelle. I love Brother David Chappelle. I love his comedy. I love his style. I like how he addresses issues that are important to him. Outside of his work as a comedian, this brother has done a lot of things, all right? And I raise my fist in the air, the Black Power salute to Brother Dave Chappelle. As a kid, growing up, Moms Mabley, the whole black comedian industry, all right, talked about part of their comedy was making fun of the black community. They probably, I remember the NAACP in its campaign against using the term, the white invented term nigger. But yet, every comedian, not every, but most of the comedians, 1940s, 50s, early 60s, all use that term, talking so badly, about making fun of behavior in our community. It was done in fun. It was done to make people laugh. It was a way of negating the negative effect of being a poor person living in stressful conditions inside of this society as such. People who get tagged by comedians don't like it for the most part, no matter what, who they are as such, right? And I can understand that. I don't think Dave Chappelle has a mean bone in his body in terms of a negative attitude about, anything. I think he's always trying to be funny as such. And everyone can agree with all comedy as such, right? Now, in terms of the specific issue, the LGBTQ community probably has more freedom of expression and being today than any time in the history of this country. All right, in terms of the progress that people have made toward bringing everybody in under the cap of humanity and saying that all people should be treated equally well as such, right? And I will tip my hat to them for that. I was in a very serious conversation with a community of people about the behavior that a lot of people exhibit in their new freedoms. And there are people, old-fashioned, older people don't like all the behavior being exhibited out in the public by everybody that's enjoying their new freedoms, no matter what tag is put on them as such, right? But if you can't take criticism, if you can't take discussion about yourself, you should get out of the public square, because everybody in the public square is a target, all right, for a comedian. Everything, like if your feet are too big, if your buttocks are too big, if your arms are too long, like if your hair is rainbow colored, if your ears look like Dumbo. I mean, hey, if you're out in the public square, the job of a comedian is to make jokes and have fun. All right, so with the newly acquired status of the LBGQT community, all right?
We're hypersensitive and we don't like it.
Yeah, I understand that, but now that you're in the public square, you're legal. You're in the public square. You're in the United States Congress. You hey, the law is on your side. You got to get down off of that high horse, saying that you want to be treated differently. All right. Anybody, whatever you are. I mean, if you're a person that want to paint yourself green and put red lipstick on and walk around, I mean, you have your individual right to be able to do that, right? But when you're out there in the public square, comedians have a right to look at anything around them in their society, and part of their craft is looking at what is and making fun about it. That's how I look at what the controversy with Dave Chappelle is. My man, all right, keep doing your work. See, not just this controversy, but keep doing your work in those projects that you're doing to uplift people. All right? It's because you are such a successful comedian that you've been able to make the type of monies that have empowered and helped a lot of other people. That's what I look at. I mean, hey, look, I'll put it this way. I'm going to end with it this way. When I was a kid growing up, all right, structurally, right, they tease me because they say I'm slew-footed. Right? And again, all the kids in the neighborhood, all the big bullies and what have you, I had to put up with going through life being pointed at because my feet, don't point straight ahead. They point outward to the side. They're called slewfoot, right? I had to address and deal with that. I don't want to, go out and get a gun and start shooting everybody who would make fun about me and my feet. I'm gonna make this personal and such, right? But hey, as I've gone on, matriculated through college, in the classroom where I was teaching, with all the things I've done in life as such, right? I am slew-footed, but that didn't prevent me from doing any of the things that I did. I don't feel embarrassed about it today as I did when I was 9 or 10 years old. All right, and it was made clear to me then. If you're gonna be it, I could stay home all the time, and I wouldn't have to worry about people teasing me about my feet. All right, or I could keep going out, move forward in life, and do what I could do. Make my achievements and not worry about something like that. So, again, to the community. I'm not one of you in terms of having had to address what you've had to address, during my 78 years. So I don't know in detail, how you feel in terms of what you're going through. But now, if you're in the public square, you're in the public domain, as it were, be prepared. Somebody's going to find something. A comedian will find something to make a joke about. Maybe your false eyelashes are too long. All right. Maybe the color combination of your clothing. All right. It's not in harmony, with your skin color. I don't know what the issue was with Dave Chappelle. Again, I didn't see the special. I don't know specifically what he said, but I have a feeling for Dave Chappelle's heart. All right. He's not a mean person as such, and most things that he laugh and make jokes about, again, is part of his craft. All right, and I salute him for taking his craft to a different level, a higher level. I hope he continues to be successful. I hope he continues, I really do hope he continues to not just be at the top of his craft, but continue those side jobs and things that he's doing to help people in the community. That's my feelings about Dave Chappelle. Thank you.